Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing Iron Lung, which was released earlier this year and was a welcome surprise. This movie I had been following for, I believe, 4 years before it even came out. I think this movie was announced way back in the year 2022, so it's safe to say that I had been waiting a long time along with millions of other fans for this movie to finally come out. This movie makes me really happy. It just does. The idea of an independent film being this successful, although it is made by a popular YouTuber, it is still a triumph that this movie did as well as it did, both at the box office and, I will say critically, it did pretty alright as well. I think I have a higher opinion of this movie than most people, and yeah, it's another movie that I really enjoyed. I've only seen it once. I saw it in the theaters back in January at my local theater, and it was an incredible experience to actually see this movie on the big screen in the theater in my hometown. Initially, when they posted the website showing all the different theater locations, I thought I was going to have to drive all the way to Louisville, Kentucky, which is a several-hour drive from where I live, but thankfully it was only a 5-minute drive. Yeah, that was a really cool experience to have it at my home theater. So, yeah, thanks to everyone that petitioned to have this movie in as many theaters as possible the world over. I think that that's really cool that people were able to pull this off. Now, the movie itself, I really liked it. It was definitely, I think, better than I was expecting. I wasn't expecting anything terrible, but with this being, a YouTuber's first time making a movie, he was the writer, the director, the editor, and starred in the movie, and I'm sure he did lots of other stuff as well. I mean, it's a big load, and not that Markiplier has not undertaken massive projects before. I know he's done The Edge of Sleep, In Space with Markiplier, Who Killed Markiplier, Date with Markiplier, all those projects which have been kind of stepping stones leading up to this point. Not to mention, he's been a YouTuber for over a decade, so I'd say he's well experienced with the idea of horror games and also working with a camera. So, yeah, I was impressed by this movie. It is an independent film, which is another thing. Like, again, I love that this movie was as successful as it was. One of the coolest parts about seeing this movie in theaters was how, of course, there was like half an hour of previews and trailers, but that's with every movie nowadays. But after that, there was no warning for the movie to begin. All of a sudden, the lights just went out. Maybe there's a monster outside of this room. Anyways, where were we? Oh, yeah. So, it was really cool to sit in the theater and just have the movie, like, the lights just went out and the movie started. There was no opening logos. It was just right into the action of it. And the first shot of this movie is pretty damn good from my opinion. I know that some people didn't enjoy it as much, but I thought that the special effects for this movie were great. I was surprised to even hear that there was any CGI, and there was a little bit of it here and there, and it was thankfully kept to a minimum, and it works pretty well for the movie, especially combined with the practical effects. This movie is very limited in its set. It takes place pretty much for 99% of the movie inside of the Iron Lung itself, which is this really small submarine. It's about the size of the room I'm in now, I'd imagine, maybe slightly bigger, but still, it's a cramped space. So I'm really happy to say that the cinematography was excellent. There were a lot of creative shots, a lot of good lighting in the space. I mean, you feel immersed in this setting. There's clearly a lot of passion just bleeding through the screen. It was just so cool to see how well this movie looks. There were also a lot of transitioning shots that I thought were excellent too. My personal favorite being when the main character, he exits out a part on the map and then it transitions to a shot where there's like an X shape of tape over a wall. And I thought that was like a really cool match cut. There's also a shot where the camera is hanging overhead of the main character as he's piloting the Iron Lung, and then it tilts up to show him also in the background working with the camera at the back of the Iron Lung, which I thought like that was a really clever transition. Another thing too that really impressed me was the soundtrack for this movie. Often especially with horror movies, I love a good soundtrack, and I think this movie soundtrack did a great job. It really captured the dread and tension of what was going on and made it feel otherworldly. Now, something else that I enjoyed about this movie was Mark's acting was actually pretty good. And again, I don't want to be like mean to the guy, but it's really hard when you've watched someone for over a decade being essentially a goofball playing various different horror games and making comedic projects. It's very difficult to take this guy seriously in a incredibly serious role where there's pretty much like no comedy. I think there's like one joke involving typing a prompt into a computer, and that's pretty much it. But which I'm not opposed to, of course. But it's just a hard jump to make. I think his acting is for the most part good. But I will say there were some moments where he made like these weird facial expressions that felt like he was kind of trying too hard. Again, I don't want to be too mean here, but it felt like he was kind of like trying too much. And there were also some line deliveries and just some lines in general that I thought were kind of just odd. Like it felt like, well, we already know this. Why is this being said to us directly? It doesn't feel necessary. It doesn't feel natural. And going to some more things that I kind of had some problems with. Again, there's going to be probably some spoilers starting now. Throughout the movie, there are a lot of audio mixing issues. And again, the people who are talking to the main character, Simon, they are speaking to him over this like intercom system, which I get that it's supposed to sound, crackly and not sound so good. But there are some points where there's other stuff going on. It is impossible to hear what the characters are saying. And I get that some of this is intentional, but there are definitely moments where it's like we're missing parts of the story. We're missing parts of the lore. And for people who are not familiar with this game, they're going to have no idea what the hell is going on for these parts because they're missing out on that part of the lore. For context, when I saw this movie, it was before I had seen anything about the lore update of this game. I knew that there was one. I just decided for some reason not to, watch any of that stuff. I just wanted to go into this, with what information I had, which again, if you've only like played the base game and are not familiar with any of the lore, you're still going to have a good time. If you are a fan of Markiplier, you're going to have a great time. If you're not familiar with the game or with him, you're going to have an interesting time. And I don't think it'll be like, completely unbearable, but this is a cosmic horror movie. There are a lot of things that happen in this movie, especially towards the second half, that are never explained because, cosmic horror is full of a lot of moments where the audience is left to decide like what this all means. And I think that's really cool, but not everyone's gonna, like that. I think that especially the second half of the movie when things especially start to pick up and get really weird, I did feel that some of it was kind of like stuff I'd seen before in other movies. Not that it wasn't executed well. Again, there's a lot of passion put into this project. But I do think that some of it did feel like, this isn't like anything super like original, which was a little disappointing considering how original I feel the concept of the game was and how original just the overall concept of the story is for this movie. But still, there were a lot of good horror moments, like the claustrophobia especially was done really well. I think that the sound design, despite some audio errors with when characters were talking, I do think a lot of it was done really well, especially when you could hear, when he's in the bottom of this blood ocean, you can hear you can hear the sub creaking, you can hear things swimming around or moving outside, and it's done really well. And going back to the cinematography too, there's also you constantly see different liquids dripping from different parts inside the sub, and of course one of the characters says it's just condensation, but in reality that's probably not true based on how it looks. It's really slimy and gross, and I love it. This movie has an excellent atmosphere. I think that's what this movie does the best, is the atmosphere. Perfect. Love the atmosphere, 10 out of 10. And yeah, I was overall really impressed with this movie and what it managed to accomplish. I believe this movie only had a $3 million budget. I thought the budget was slightly bigger than that, but yeah, it did a lot for what it had. And again, another thing sorry, I'm kind of going all over the place here, but going back to the story of this movie, I do think that there were some flashbacks showing the main character as a young child, and I think it goes back to the narrator who opens the movie. There's not a narrator throughout the movie, but the opening scene does have some narration, which I think is done pretty well. The voice acting for whoever was behind it did a good job. Then you are shown a scene about an hour and a half later into the movie with this guy having a flashback. Another thing too is we don't really get a whole lot of his backstory, especially when he was a younger child. And it kind of begs the question of was this really necessary to be included in the movie? As someone who was going into this movie knowing that most of it was going to be taking place in this really small claustrophobic setting, I was really hoping that they were going to stick to as much as possible. And they did. Again, 99% of the movie does take place in the setting. But the problem is that when you do cut away to a different setting, it does feel a bit jarring, especially considering what it cuts to. There's some the scenes that take place outside the sub, I will say, like, again, the special effects for the most part are great, but there are some where it's like, I'm not really sure if this was like super necessary to say. Again, this is kind of a nitpick, but it was just a little odd, is all I'm saying. And the ending of this movie too, again, spoilers. I know a lot of people are not going to be a huge fan of because I mean, the ending it doesn't exactly end well, and it's even implied that the characters who are there to retrieve what Simon is trying to retrieve, like he's going to grab something from a ship that he's found in the Blood Ocean and bring it up to the surface of said ocean. But it seems like just before he's able to even do this, which he dies in the process of doing, a pretty horrible and surprisingly gory death. I mean, this movie broke the record for having the most blood in a movie. So I mean, it was to be expected that there was gonna have a lot of blood at some point. But I was really impressed by the gore of this movie too. Like when his whole arm is just ripped off the wall. It's like, man, I was not expecting that. It's actually a cool touch to the movie. But anyways, getting back to what I was saying, it seems like the character who was going to retrieve the information that Simon's character got, it seems like she dies before Simon is even able to accomplish this goal. So unless there's like other people on the ship, which there definitely are, but not that many, especially considering that a lot of them were given a heaping dose of lethal radiation just a few hours ago. Like I don't know, like is all hope lost? Like is it a bad, like did the story have a bad ending? Or is there someone else alive? Because it looks like a spotlight from something is looking down on this object that now floats at the surface of the Blood Ocean for the final shot. Now, I don't know if this is just like the lighting so that way people can actually see what's happening, or if it's a spotlight from an actual ship. But either way, it's just kind of like, I don't know. Like, I guess that having an open-ended ending is not bad. But this movie, like, I don't know if it is open-ended or not. It's just like, maybe I'm just an idiot and I fucking, missed something again. But I don't know. It was just a little odd, is all I'd say. But other than that, like, the story, I think, did a pretty good job. I did enjoy the first half of this movie more than the second half. I feel that the first half did a great job with a lot of the build-up. And the second half, while it's still pretty good, I thought that a lot of the payoff was a little iffy, and there were, like, more scenes, I think, where Mark's acting didn't really come through completely. But still, overall, I was really impressed with this movie, I'd have to say. One thing that also intrigued me, like, even just from the trailers alone about this movie was, because in the original game, you hear the voice of another character as you're descending below the Blood Ocean. I mean, you could barely hear him as his audio begins to go dead as you sink further and further into the oceans of blood. And then you're on your own for the entire rest of the story. Like, yes, you can find, like, entry logs that were left behind by other characters, but you don't hear anyone else's voice. And this change was something that really intrigued me about this movie, because I thought a lot of the excellent horror from the game was because of the sense of isolation. Being in this small, cramped submarine in an ocean of blood was incredibly unique. And the fact that there was really no one else to talk to, I feel like, added to the horror. Now, what this movie does is it creates some strange cosmic horror by having it to where, especially, again, spoilers, later in the movie he's talking to a character who might not actually be real, or maybe not human. That, I feel like, is a really cool way to capitalize on this change to the story. I feel like, okay, this justifies. And after a while, you do still, like, feel that tension while there are people talking to the character. It kind of adds more stress in a way, and I really like that they made the change work with that. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to say about this movie. Again, it's not perfect, it's definitely unpolished in some parts, but what I love is the passion of this movie and just the heart that was put into it. It's really fun to see, especially, and I'm especially happy that we got to see it on the big screen this year. I am feeling a 71 as the score of this movie. And something I do want to touch on quickly before I end the video is I know Mark himself has even said that he's not a big fan of reviews giving like scores. And I get it. It's not really like the crux of the review. At least I hope it's not. I mean, I do it at the end, and if you want, you could just skip towards the end to see what number I gave this movie out of 100. But I kind of do it as like a way to have fun in a way. I genuinely feel like that you can't put a number on everything, especially when it comes to like reviewing something, like anything, like especially movies or video games or music. But I just kind of do it as a way to have fun. For me, it's like a way to see, like, oh, I gave this movie like this number. How does it compare to like a movie that I gave that number? And hopefully in the future, as I review more and more projects, a lot of projects will probably end up getting the same number. And I think it'd be interesting to see, like, like say, if I gave another movie a 71, like how would it compare directly to this movie, Iron Lung, which I also gave a 71? Are there like, you know, what holds it to that, score in my mind? Like really the score is just for me. And I feel like it's kind of a stupid way to ironically say like, oh, you can't put a number on everything, so I'm going to try to do that. But anyways, that's just like why I do the number score, but not that you asked, but that's just an explanation. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching. Hopefully I'll have another review out soon. I think that during the weekends, I'm not really sure if I'm going to post that many videos. I'll try to. They may not be reviews. I'm hoping to do videos that are outside of reviews. And again, please let me know in the comments below if you have any ideas for any movies or even TV shows that you might want me to review at all. Anything that comes to mind. I can't make any promises, but I would love to hear your suggestions. So thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.